Welcome back to the sig figs video. This is part 2. We left off with the multiplication division rules. We're going to get started on those. In my opinion, the multiplication division is actually a little easier than the addition subtraction. Alright, so in multiplication division, as far as knowing where to round our answers, the answer should contain the same number of significant figures as the measurement with the fewest number of sig figs. So the example we have here, if we wanted to find the area of the table from the previous example, recall the perimeter, I'll flip back to that. Before we calculated the perimeter of this table with the dimensions that we have there. Now let's say we wanted to find the area. So recall area would just be length times width. This is what you would get in your if you plug this in your calculator, 3,374.31 square centimeters. But our initial measurement only has 3 sig figs. The second one has 4. 3 is obviously fewer than 4. So I must round my answer to the fewest number of sig figs. I have to round it to 3 sig figs. So just looking at my answer from the calculator, I just start counting from the left. 1, 2, 3. That's 7 there. That's where the third sig fig would be. Okay, so I look to the next digit. That's less than 5. So I round down. So I leave that as a 7. So my answer then is 3,370 square centimeters. Again, remember, you need to put a 0 in for a placeholder in this case, because if I don't, then obviously that becomes only 337, which drastically changes the value. Okay, so I still have 3 sig figs there. I just need the 0 there as a placeholder. All right, let's go back to the notes page then, and we'll take a look at the examples. This is at the bottom of the first page there. We're asked to report your answer to the correct number of significant figures. Notice all these here are either multiplication or division. Alright, so again I'll show you my calculator here as I do this. So question A, we have 2.5 meters times 5.3. I'll just plug that in. 2.5 times 5.3, and your calculator tells you 13.25. 13.25. My units here would be square meters, because meters times meters would be square meters. Both of these measurements have 2 sig figs. One thing that you might want to do when you're starting this with multiplication division, go ahead and just write the number of sig figs somewhere above it or something. I'll zoom in here a little bit so you guys see this a little better. So my answer then has to contain 2 sig figs, because that's the fewest number. Well, I start counting from the first non-zero on the left, 1, 2. So the 3 there, that's where the second sig fig is. I look to the next digit, that's less than 5, so I round down. So I leave my 3 as a 3, so my answer is 13 square meters. There's my answer. Alright, question B. We have division. The rules don't change any. I'm still doing fewest number of sig figs. The 408 miles, that would be 3 sig figs. The 2.638 hours, that would be 4. So my answer will have 3 sig figs. Alright, just plug in my calculator here. 408 divided by 2.638. That gives me, my calculator tells me 154.6626. And I don't need to write all the digits here because I know I'm going to round it anyway. And my units there would be miles per hour. Notice my third sig fig here, 1, 2, 3, that would be the ones place in this case. I look to the next digit, it's bigger than 5, so I round up. So I run my 4 up to a 5, and my answer is 155 miles per hour. That's my answer. Okay, question C. We have 2.600 grams. That would be 4 sig figs. Remember, those final zeros after the decimal are always significant. And then my 3.65 centimeters cubed, that would be 3 sig figs. So my answer will have 3 sig figs in it. Let me just plug it in here. We have 2.6 divided by 3.65. My calculator tells me 0.71232. Again, you don't need to write all the digits there. You're going to round it anyway. Alright, so I need to have 3 sig figs. I don't count any leading zeros. So this 0 or any other leading zeros, don't count those because they're never significant. So my first sig fig would be the 7, so count over 3 from there. 1, 2, 3. So the third sig fig here in this case is in the thousands place. I look to the next digit. It's less than 5, so I round down. So I get to leave that as a 2, so my answer is 0.7. Oh, I left out the 1. 0.712 grams per centimeter cubed. And there's our answer. Alright, last example on the multiplication division. Here I have another multiplication. Both of these are 2 sig figs, 29 times 12. So 29 times 12, your calculator tells you 348. I only get 2 sig figs though, so counting from the left, 1, 2. I'm going to have to round this to the tens place. I look to the next digit. It's bigger than 5, so I round up. The common mistake here is just to write this as 35, but remember I need a 0 here as a placeholder to hold the value. So my answer is 350 miles squared, because miles times miles would be miles squared. Alright, the rest of this video will be working the practice problems on the second page of the note sheet. So I would pause it and try some on your own and see how you do. Actually, it looks like I lied here. It looks like I have a couple more example problems at the top of the page. I forgot about those. These are really the same things we were just doing. They just have 2 different calculations. And the first one, it's both multiplication. The second one, it's both multiplication and division. You don't need to change your rules any because it's all the same rules. So on E, just looking at the number of sig figs, I have 3 sig figs, 3 sig figs, and 4 sig figs. So my answer will contain 3 sig figs, the fewest number. Just plugging those in, I have 8.72 times 3.63 times 10.99. My calculator tells me 347.87. Now 3 sig figs, I would round in this case to the ones place. That would be the third sig fig. My next digit is bigger than 5, so I round up. So my answer is 348 centimeters cubed. I wrote squared there. It would be cubed because centimeters times centimeters times centimeters would be centimeters cubed. Alright, the last example here, and this really is the last example, is a multiplication and a division. It's the same rule, so I don't need to worry about doing anything different. The first one is 3 sig figs, the second one's 3, the third one is only 2, so I'll need to have 2 sig figs in my answer. Now when you plug this in your calculator, what some students will do is they'll hit 19.6 times 3.26, they'll hit equals, they'll try to get a value for that and round that for sig figs, and then do the division. Don't do that because it's all the same rule. Just divide it by 0.025. You just want to do the one calculation. Your calculator will tell you 2,555.8. I only get 2 sig figs, so counting from the left, 1, 2. I'm going to have to round this to the hundreds place. Now my next digit is a 5. Remember, if it's exactly 5, then I would round to the even value. But it's not exactly 5. It's 5 and some other digits. So it's going to be closer to the higher number. So I will round up. So I round the 5 to a 6. This would become 2,600. This would be kilometers squared per second. Because I have kilometers times kilometers divided by seconds. So kilometers squared per second. Alright, that is the end of the example problems. So we'll just jump down here and work on the practice. I encourage you to pause the video and just try to do some of this and then see how you did once you've worked the problem. Alright, question A on the practice, we have a subtraction. So recall addition, subtraction, we're looking at the number of decimal places. So plugging in my numbers here, 32.5 minus 18.67. This equals 13.83. Looking at our measurements here, though, the first measurement only has a sig fig to the tens place. The second one does go to the hundreds, but I have to keep to the least precise, so I need to round my answer to the tens place. So my next digit is less than 5, so I round down. So my answer is 13.8 seconds. Okay, there's the first example. Next one, we have division. 4.5 divided by 3.266. Recall that is number of sig figs. The first measurement has 2 sig figs. The second one has 4. So I'll need to keep 2 sig figs. 4.5 divided by 3.266. That gives me 1.377. Again, rounding to 2 sig figs. So count over from the left. Looking to the next digit, the 7 is obviously bigger than 5, so I round up. So my answer is 1.4 meters per second. Meters divided by seconds would be meters per second. Alright, next one we have multiplication. So remember, that's just like division. That's number of sig figs. We have 3 sig figs and 3 sig figs. So I get to have 3 sig figs in my answer. 1.59 times 8.64. My calculator tells me 13.738. And again, you can kind of write that however you want. You're going to round it anyway. So 3 sig figs, counting from the left, 1, 2, 3. Notice here I have to round to the tenths place, even though both of my measurements went to the hundredths. Where students will mess these up is they just get the rules confused. So remember, multiplication, division, you're looking simply at number of sig figs. The decimal places don't matter. If you follow the addition subtraction rules here, you'll end up keeping an extra sig fig that you shouldn't, because you would have kept to the hundredths place where we need to round to the tenths. So this one rounding to the tenths, the next digit is less than 5, so I round down. So my answer is 13.7 centimeters squared. Okay, question D, we have addition. So I have 1450 plus 224 plus 18.3. My calculator tells me 1,692.3. This 0 in the 1450 is not significant. So I don't even get to keep to the ones place. I have to round this answer to the tens place. So the next digit is less than 5, so I round down. So my answer is 1,690 liters. Don't forget to put that 0 in as a placeholder once you round to the tens place there. Alright, 2 more practice. E, we have division. So we have 4 sig figs, and remember, leading zeros are never significant. So this is just 3 sig figs here on the left, or excuse me, on the right. So I need to have 3 sig figs in my answer. So let's see what our calculator tells us. 12 divided by 0.0295. My calculator tells me 406.77. 3 sig figs. Start counting from the left. 1, 2, 3. So I need to round this to the ones place. The next digit is bigger than 5, so I round up. So my answer is 407 centimeters per minute. And our last practice, we have addition and we have subtraction. Remember, those are the same rule, so you don't need to do different rules. Just follow the same rules because they are the same. So just plug it all in at once. We have 98.6 grams plus 2.75 grams minus 48.224 grams. Calculator tells you 53.126. Looking at the decimal places, the first measurement goes to the tenths, the next one to the hundredths, the next one to the thousandths. I have to round to the least precise, so round to the tenths. The next digit is less than 5, so I round down. So this is 53.1 grams.